What's going on, everybody? My name is Curci. I just played Subnautica, and now I want to play it. What? I just played Subnautica, now I want to talk about it. Subnautica is a game that I always knew about, and I recently got an itch to want to play survival games, and I looked on the PlayStation, and I saw that it was free to play, so I grabbed it, which, by the way, I did play this game on the PlayStation. I didn't play it on the PC, though I think it is best played on the PC. What I was expecting was a game that was going to have survival elements where you're just managing your food, your water, your oxygen, and it's all about progressing, gathering resources, and building yourself out, and just exploring different regions. But what I didn't expect was for the game to have such a strong narrative element, and something that was going to always pull me back in. Like, I never wanted to take a break from this game. I always wanted to be playing it. Now, before we get into the details of why I enjoyed this game so much, I want to remind everybody to please give this video a like. It helps out tremendously. Also, consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified of all new video uploads. Now, let's talk about Subnautica. Now, when you first boot up Subnautica, things are already terrible because you were a crew member on the ship known as the Aurora, which is already in the process of crashing down to this planet. So you jump into a life pod, you launch to safety, and when you pop out, you see that the Aurora has crashed on the planet and you are stranded on an ocean world. So the first thing you need to do is you need to dive into the world. You need to gather resources so you can make an O2 tank, you can make fins, you can start to build yourself up to have certain tools. And that's pretty much what this game is all about gathering resources and finding the next thing that you can build to progress yourself so that you can do additional things. For example, one of the first things that I always like to build is the flashlight, because the problem is that it has a day-night cycle in this game, and when it's night, it's dark. So it's super hard to find resources in the dark if you don't have a flashlight. So you need the flashlight pretty early, and in order to get the flashlight, you need to acquire certain materials. And part of this game is learning about what materials make what thing, but also more specifically is where to find said materials, because once you get into the late game, you're going to be asked to find materials, and you're like, all right, I need to go to this place to get this thing. Like, at one point, the game's going to be like, you need to find kyanite. And I'm like, where do I find kyanite? But that's because I never discovered the region where you can find kyanite. When you play a game like Minecraft, you just kind of have to get the resources and then you can build the thing. The knowledge is already there, you just need to get the resources for it. But in Subnautica, in order for you to build certain things, you need to uncover the blueprints for it. And you do that by scanning fragments of items that you find amongst wreckages. If you want to make a beacon, you have to scan fragments for a beacon. If you want to make the sea moth, you have to scan the fragments of a sea moth. And the sea moth is a submersible that will allow you to explore without the risk of running out of air. But if you want to build out your base, there are certain rooms that you have to discover out in the world. You can't just make a nuclear reactor right off the bat. You have to scan fragments of a nuclear reactor so that now you have the knowledge of, oh, I see how that was put together. Now I know how to put it together. And of course, you still need to find the resources to make a nuclear reactor work. And that's what this game is. It's got the survival elements where you're finding fish, or you're cooking fish so that you can eat. You're finding ways of acquiring water so that you can drink. You're building out your base with a whole lot of storage, because that's one of the first hurdles that you're going to encounter in this game, is that you're going to run out of storage quickly. So the first thing you probably should work toward is getting yourself in a position where you can build out a base so that you can make storage lockers so that you can store more stuff. Because otherwise you're reliant on the life pod, and that's not a whole lot of storage space. But again, it's all about this idea of progression. You know, in order for you to do a certain thing, you need to acquire a certain item. To explore certain depths, you need to acquire the vehicle that can go to that depth. You need to upgrade it. I mean, not everything is going to go to the deepest depths of this world. For example, the sea moth can only go down as far as 200 meters of depth, but you can upgrade it to 300 and eventually even 900. And then things become a lot easier for you, because once you can explore certain depths, the world starts to unlock itself and unveil itself a little bit more, and you start to gain more resources the further down you go. And the further down you go, the more you begin to realize, like, I should probably build a base down here, because the first base that you make is probably going to be close to the surface, where you might be able to find a lot of food, you might be able to find a lot of the basic resources, but some of the more rare stuff you might have to dive a little bit deeper for. And sometimes you're just like, I don't feel like traveling so far away, so I want to have a base that I can operate out of where I can be close to these rare resources. But as you're building out your base is becoming a little bit more vulnerable. As you're adding windows, you're going to sacrifice your hull integrity, and there are times where your base can start to flood, so you have to build reinforcements, you have to build foundations to make sure that you have a secure base. You also have to manage its power, depending on where your base is, because if you're close to the surface, solar panels are probably going to be fine, but the deeper you go, it becomes a little bit harder to find the right power source, so you have to make sure that you have a proper reactor that will give you proper power. This game is a survival game. That's at the heart of it. You are always trying to gather food, you are trying to gather water, you are trying to manage your O2, you're trying to upgrade yourself so that you can have better oxygen tanks, so you can have better food. There's a way that you can be self-sufficient. You can grow your own plants. You can build out your base to be as massive as you want. You can build out attachments to your base, create a scanner room, and then start to scan for materials. So you're not just out there looking with a flashlight trying to find that one specific material that you need. You can create a submarine that goes to the deepest depths of this world. But of course, the deeper you go, the more it becomes dangerous. Not only because your vehicles can only go down a certain way, but sometimes you're going to find creatures that are terrifying. First and foremost is the Reaper. The Reaper is probably the most terrifying presence in this game. You can hear them roaring from a distance. When you get up close, they immediately go for you. Their roar is loud, it's sudden, it's terrifying. So you'll be traveling the world and you'll hear the roar of the Reaper from the distance, and then you're like, crap, it's somewhere, and I don't want to accidentally slap into it, because sometimes I've done that. Sometimes I was just exploring areas a little blindly. I knew there was a Reaper in the area, but I wasn't that concerned about it, and then all of a sudden, I probably crap myself. But it's not even just the Reaper that can pose a potential threat. There are creatures further down that will be a little bit more hostile, a little bit more dangerous, and you have to be careful when you're going to those depths. But with risk comes reward. You have to be down there to either advance in the story or to gain a material that you don't have. This game is all about creating goals for yourself, identifying what it is that you need, and then working toward that thing. And speaking of story, this game has one. I didn't expect it to have one. I knew that there was a narrative reason as to why you were where you were. You were on the Aurora, it crashed, and now that's why you're there. There might be potentially other survivors, other life pods that you can go out and discover. There might be an SOS. You go there and you learn that the life pod has been damaged. You explore the area a little bit. You might find a blueprint for something that you're going to need later, or you discover a PDA which might reveal what happened to the people that were in this life pod. So you start to put the pieces together of what's happening to the other survivors of the Aurora, but you're following this breadcrumb of story that this game is leaving you, and it was something that I didn't really expect it to have. When you play a game like Minecraft, you know it's going to have the survival element, but the big pull of that game is the creativity, the fact that the entire world is at your disposal. You see a mountain, you're just like, all right, I'm going to cut right through the mountain, or I'm just going to get rid of the mountain. There's a lot of work in doing that, but it can be done. But the game doesn't have a narrative. It doesn't explain why you're there. It doesn't explain why there are zombies, what Endermen are. You don't have to discover the means of creating a portal to hell. You just know this is what I need to do it, and this is how to do it. But Subnautica will have little pieces, little breadcrumbs of story that it puts throughout. You learn more about why you are where you are, like beyond the fact that the ship crashed. It begins to reveal why the ship crashed. But then there are secrets to this world that you slowly uncover, and that's what I didn't expect. The first time I got a big piece of the story, I was like, I didn't expect that from this game. Just reading the details and the data that you uncover from these things you scan, you start to put these pieces together, and it was one of those things that I really enjoyed the most about this game, because it was the subtlety of it. The game never forces or pushes you toward a story. It's just kind of there if you decide to look for it. There's no waypoints that you can set that is like, oh, I need to go to that location or this location. It's vague enough to where it will give you clues where it's like, all right, you got A, now you need to get B, and B might be somewhere, so you have to discover where that next step is. But theoretically speaking, you could just simply go directly to point C and be like, oh yeah, okay. Theoretically, I didn't do that. I progressed in the game the way that the game wanted me to progress, but it was just fascinating how the game didn't hold my hand when it came to a story, and I wish that there was more video games that did that. Like, don't give me a game that's going to give me a waypoint to go to a specific area. Let me figure things out on my own. Kind of like the way, only because this is super fresh in my head, but the way that Dark Souls and Bloodborne does it with the story, where the story is there if you decide to look for it, but once you start to look for it, you start to uncover the pieces and put the pieces together by reading item descriptions and really listening to the cutscenes. Subnautica's story is not as vague as, say, a From Software game, but it's still not at the forefront of this game. But if you do want to get to a point where you can escape this world, then there's some story you have to go through in order to accomplish that goal. I don't want to tell anything more about the story because I feel like that was my experience going into it. I knew very little, and so when I was uncovering it, I was like, holy crap, this is a thing that's in this game? And what is sad is that I'll never have that moment again with this game. Like, I'll never play this game for the first time ever again, and that's sad. And I want people that do play this game to share that experience. I don't don't want to tell you too much about the story other than you are on a ship, it crashed onto this world, and now you can get off of it by following a progression, but discover that progression. I don't want to say anything more than that. I think this game really works in terms of its survival elements, its progression, the way that you can find materials that you can build out. It's not as creative as, say, Minecraft, but just building out your base, being able to put your base anywhere. It's not like you have a set location where you can put bases down. You can actually set your own waypoint, so it's like, oh, this is a thing that I want to remember and I want to come back to, so I have to create a beacon, and then I'm going to place the beacon down, I'm going to name it, and now it's there. Exploration is important because sometimes you're just going to hit a wall and you're like, I need something new to create, but I need to find the blueprint so that I can make that thing, which means I need to go out and explore. And the more you explore, the more you uncover, and the more you uncover, the more open this game becomes, the more life you start to see in this world because you're discovering creatures that you wouldn't have discovered if you didn't go out and explore. Push the boundaries of where you're meant to go. Perhaps even get a little too close to a Reaper because there are resources directly below it, so you have to kind of get a little too close to it. With risk comes reward. This game is so freaking good, but it's not perfect. In that, this game is a slow burn. It's not really a negative to say that. That's just the way that the game is. I just think it's important to voice the idea that this game is a slow burn. It's all about finding resources. You might be spending hours just trying to gather resources just so you can build the thing. And sometimes, and this was a little bit of a negative, sometimes you got to a point where you had discovered so many blueprints and so many things that in order for you to do anything new, you had to discover a certain thing, and it's just really hard to find that certain thing. For example, very early on in the game, you're going to discover eggs, creature eggs, and the game tells you that, oh, if you put this in some sort of alien containment, then yeah, you can hatch these eggs. You could discover what will come out of these eggs. But in order for you to find the alien containment blueprint, you need to go to a very specific place, which I didn't find right away. So for the early moments of this game, I was collecting eggs because I was like, oh, this will be useful eventually. But because I never found the blueprint for the thing that I can actually put the eggs in and hatch them, I ended up just stockpiling all these eggs and they were just taking up space. But then I eventually found that thing, and when I found that thing, it opened up a whole new world of like, oh crap, this is what hatches out of all of these eggs. And before I knew it, I had like these majestic creatures just floating around my base. But this game is plagued by a few technical problems. For example, the game takes forever to load. The more the game has to think, the longer the load times become. If you're saving and quitting within your base, if your base is small, it's gonna happen relatively quick, but the bigger your base is, the more the game has to load, which means the longer it takes to load. And God forbid you're down in the depths of this world where it has to render so much more stuff. It just sometimes takes more than 2 or 3 minutes to load, that's too much. Not only that, but the game crashed on me numerous times. I lost a lot of progress early on in the game because the game would just crash. At one point, I tried to play hardcore. Hardcore is a game mode where you only save if you quit, and you only have one life. You don't get any warning when your O2 is about to run out. So you get one chance at this life. I actually tried to make a video of me playing in hardcore, and I progressed to a point, but then the game was like, crash. And because I never saved, because I never quit the game, I lost all of my progress in that run, which sucks because I rarely died in this game. You're probably gonna die the most if you run out of O2. Like, very rarely are you gonna get killed by something. I mean, it's gonna happen. There are going to be creatures that just beat the crap out of you. You might stumble into a Reaper without noticing it, but then there are hostile creatures that aren't Reapers, like the crab snakes. So playing on something like hardcore gave me a little bit of a challenge because I felt like, oh, it's easy to manage a lot with this game. I'm not starving to death. But speaking of saving and quitting, the game also takes forever to save. And when it's saving, it also holds the game up. So let's just say you go and save the game. Now the game's saving in the background and it takes a long time to save. But you get into your sea moth, you go out into the world to go explore this wreck that you knew was nearby. But once you get to the wreck's not there because the game is slowly saving and it's focusing on saving, so it's not rendering out the world the way it should be. So when it's done saving, then the world begins to render, which by the way happened a couple of times. I don't have footage of it, but I know at one point I showed up at a wreck with my sea moth and then the wreck spawned around me and my sea moth was caught in a place where it was not supposed to be in, but it also can't get out. So I had to bump it around and destroy it. I would hate knowing that it was always there. I had to blow it up. I had to put it out of its misery. Slow loading textures. It crashes on me more than once. It takes forever to load. The more you advance, the longer it takes to load. Depending on where you are, the longer it takes to load. I mean, luckily the game only loads once. It loads when you first boot it up. It doesn't really have anything in the way of loading screen once you're in the world. So it's really only once you boot the game up, you have to sit for a while. I eventually got into the habit of, I know I'm going to play this game. I'm just going to jump into it. I'm going to load it up. I'm going to go do other things. And then when I come back, the game will be loaded and I'll be able to sit down and spend hours in it. There was also a point where more than once the game would glitch out. Eventually you can upgrade your knife to be a thermal knife so that when you cut fish, it will cook it so that you don't have to worry about going back to your base to a fabricator to cook the food. You can just be like, crap, I'm starving, stab, eat it right away. But there's an effect that comes off of the knife being heated. It sends off bubbles if you're out in the water. For some reason, if it's in a certain slot when you're doing a certain thing, all of a sudden that effect will be right in the middle of your screen, and the only way to fix it is to back out of the game and then load back in, which again takes a while to load, so it's a little bit of a hiccup. But there's some glitches, it takes forever to save, it takes forever to load, and sometimes the game crashes. These are all things that hold this game back from being amazing. And so now we find ourselves at the end of this video where we begin to think, where would I rank this game on the recommendation meter? I'm gonna put this game on it's good. I want to put it on must play, but I think the technical issues of it takes forever to save, it takes forever to load, it sometimes has slow pop-ins when it comes to rendering out the world, sometimes it crashes on you, sometimes it has the occasional glitch that is a little bit more than inconvenient. It does hit a wall at a certain point when you've uncovered most of the blueprints, but then there's a very specific blueprint that you need to uncover, but it's hard to find because it's a very specific thing in a very large world. But I thoroughly enjoyed this game. I enjoyed the progression. I enjoyed the fact that this was exactly the kind of survival game that I wanted to play. I love that there was this hint of story that was in it. When this game hit, it freaking hits. It does get held back by some of the game-breaking stuff, and I think that that prevents it from being a must-play game. Like, I want to put it at must-play, but it's good. But I spent so much time in this game. I adored this game. Actually, I played this game for 2 days, 6 hours, and 21 minutes. Give it an extra like 20 minutes for actually completing the game from the last time I saved to when I actually finished it. So we're actually closer more to like 55 hours. But I really enjoyed this game. But it's also important, like I say, with every game to understand the type of game that you're getting into. This is a survival game. It's a slow burn. It's all about progression. The game's not going to hold your hand. It's not going to tell you what to do. But if you decide to look for the story, it is there. But you could also completely ignore the story and just progress. Anyway, I enjoyed the hell out of this game. I would highly recommend it if you are a fan of survival games. I love this game. I wish that I never got to a point where I felt the need to put it down, but I gotta go play other games. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. It really helps out. Comment below if you played Subnautica, what you thought of it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified of all new video uploads. Share the video with your friends. Get it out there. I would really appreciate if you did that. Also, check out some of these other videos over here to the side. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you next time.